I gotta be honest with you, right now feels like one of those moments where the direction of this team could change really fast. You can feel it in the air this offseason. The Lions are clearly cooking something. Moves are happening, rumors are flying, and suddenly there are questions popping up that could seriously impact where this team goes next. And today, we've got two major stories surrounding the Detroit Lions that every single fan needs to be paying attention to. One of them involves a free agent that Detroit absolutely cannot afford to ignore this offseason, and the other one, honestly, it's one of the wildest trade ideas I've heard connected to the Lions in a long time, and if it actually happened, it could completely change the identity of this team overnight. Both of these situations tie directly into something every Lions fan is thinking about right now. How close is this team to truly competing for a Super Bowl? Because depending on what Brad Holmes decides to do in the coming weeks, the Lions could either take a huge step forward or miss a massive opportunity. But before we break down these two stories, real quick, if you're a real Detroit Lions fan, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and join the community. This channel is brand new, Lions Nation Report. And we're trying to hit our first 2,000 subscribers with real Lions fans who follow this team every day just like we do. So let's start with the first story, because this one is directly tied to what could be a very important free agency period for Detroit. Free agency negotiations are opening at noon on Monday, and you better believe Brad Holmes and the Lions front office have been preparing for this moment for a while. Normally, Holmes has a pretty clear strategy. He likes to use free agency mostly to bring in complementary players, while the NFL draft is where he really builds the core of the roster, but this year might be a little different. Because after some of the recent roster moves Detroit has made, there are suddenly multiple positions that need attention. We're talking about needs now at running back, center, and offensive tackle, and that's before we even start talking about players who could leave in free agency. And one position that could become a real problem fast is defensive end. Right now, the Lions obviously have one of the best young pass rushers in football with Aiden Hutchinson, who just came off a monster 2025 season with 14.5 sacks, the best of his career. But on the other side of that defensive line, things could get complicated. Both Alquadin Muhammad and Marcus Davenport are heading into free agency. And if Muhammad doesn't come back, Detroit would be losing a guy who just put up 11 sacks in 2025, which is not production you can just replace easily. So suddenly, the Lions could find themselves with Hutchinson on one side and no proven second edge rusher on the other. And if this team wants to take the next step, especially defensively, that's not a situation you want heading into the season. That's why one name is starting to come up as a very logical free agent target for Detroit, and that name is Boy Mayfield. Maffey is coming off a Super Bowl championship with the Seattle Seahawks, and according to projections from Pro Football Focus, he's expected to land a contract worth about $16.3 million per year over 3 years. Now, when you look at Maffey's stats, they might not immediately jump off the page. Over 4 seasons in the NFL, he has 20 career sacks. But there's something important there. Back in 2023, which was his second season in the league, he had 9 sacks, which was his best year. That shows there's definitely upside still there, especially in the right system. And one thing the Lions coaching staff has always valued is versatility, and that's another reason Maffey could make sense in Detroit. He's not just someone who lines up strictly as an edge rusher. He can also play Sam linebacker, which could help take some of the workload off Derek Barnes in certain defensive looks. So imagine a defensive front where you've got Aiden Hutchinson on one side and Boy Mayfield bringing speed and athleticism on the other. That suddenly gives Detroit a much more balanced pass rush. And another key part of this is the money. Right now, the Lions do have some cap space, but exactly how much they'll have available is still a bit unclear. The team recently created some room with moves earlier this week, but they could open even more space if they decide to restructure some bigger contracts. Contracts like Jared Goff, Aleem McNeil, and Penei Sewell could all potentially be restructured to free up additional cap space. And until those decisions are made, it's hard to know whether Detroit will go after top-tier free agents or if they'll focus more on second-tier options that still fill key needs. That's where Mayfield becomes really interesting, because he's considered a solid, affordable option at a position of need, and signing him wouldn't completely destroy the Lions' cap flexibility if Brad Holmes also wants to pursue help somewhere else. Like maybe bringing in a top offensive lineman if the opportunity appears. So when you really look at it, this is one of those situations where the Lions could quietly make a really smart move that strengthens the roster without blowing up their long-term financial plans. And honestly, pairing Boy Mayfield with Aiden Hutchinson could make this pass rush a lot more dangerous than people expect. But now, let's talk about the second story. because this one is way more dramatic. And I'm telling you right now, when I first heard this idea, I had to pause for a second, because a former NFL general manager just proposed a crazy trade scenario involving the Detroit Lions, and it includes one of the most explosive players on this roster. Last week on the show Get Up, former NFL general manager Mike Tannenbaum floated a pretty shocking idea involving Detroit and the Cleveland Browns. His proposal? The Lions would trade 2 first-round picks and wide receiver Jameson Williams to the Browns in exchange for superstar pass rusher Myles Garrett. That's the idea. According to Tannenbaum, if Detroit truly believes it's one elite pass rusher away from competing for a Super Bowl, then this is the kind of aggressive move a team should consider. He literally said that if the Lions had Aiden Hutchinson on one side and Myles Garrett on the other, that defensive line could be powerful enough to push Detroit all the way to the Super Bowl. On the flip side, he argued that it could make sense for Cleveland as well, because in his view, the Browns are a year away from being a year away, meaning they're not really close to competing right now. So instead of holding on to Garrett, who is already considered a future Hall of Fame player, Cleveland could start a major rebuild. And in that rebuild, they would get 2 first-round picks, plus a young explosive receiver in Jameson Williams. Tannenbaum actually doubled down on the idea again Monday morning on ESPN Radio's show Unsportsmanlike. He basically said if he were running the Browns, he would seriously consider making that trade to gather as many assets as possible. And from Detroit's perspective, his thinking is simple. The Lions already have great young offensive talent. They can score points, they can run the football, and the offense already has explosive weapons. So his argument is that if Detroit had to sacrifice one offensive piece to land the best pass rusher in the game, it might be worth it. He even referenced the philosophy used by Bill Walsh when building the dynasty with the San Francisco 49ers, having a strong passing offense, the ability to run the ball, and elite pass rushers who can dominate games in the fourth quarter. And according to Tannenbaum, that formula could work in Detroit too. Now, personally. This is where things get complicated, because on one hand, pairing Myles Garrett with Aiden Hutchinson would be absolutely terrifying for opposing quarterbacks. That kind of pass rush could completely change the identity of the Lions' defense overnight. But giving up 2 first-round picks and Jameson Williams, that's a massive price. Jameson is one of the most explosive playmakers on this team. Every time he touches the ball, there's the potential for a huge play. Losing that kind of speed on offense would definitely change things for Jared Goff and the entire offensive system. So this is the type of move that would divide the fan base immediately. Some fans would say you go all in for a generational pass rusher like Myles Garrett. Others would say you don't break up your young offensive core and give away multiple first-round picks to do it. But either way, the fact that these kinds of ideas are even being discussed tells you something important. The Detroit Lions are no longer a team people ignore. They're a team people believe might be 1 or 2 big moves away from serious Super Bowl contention. And that's exactly why this offseason is so important. Brad Holmes now has decisions to make. Does he stay patient and keep building through the draft like he's always done? Does he attack free agency and add players like Boy Mayfair to strengthen key positions? Or does he consider something bold, something aggressive, like chasing a superstar defender to take this roster to another level? Because right now, the expectations around this team are real. After finishing 9-8 and missing the playoffs, the Lions know they have to bounce back in 2026. The schedule should help, since Detroit will be playing a 4th-place schedule, which could give them a real opportunity to get momentum back. But talent still matters. And if this front office makes the right moves this offseason, this team could absolutely put itself back in the playoff conversation, and maybe even push toward that Super Bowl window that Lions fans have been waiting for. So now I want to hear from you. Would you like to see the Lions sign Boy Mayfair in free agency? And be honest, would you trade Jameson Williams and 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett, or is that just way too much? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I really want to hear where the fan base stands on this. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This is a brand new channel, Lions Nation Report, and we're trying to reach our first 2,000 subscribers, building a real community of Detroit Lions fans who live and breathe this team. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.